Ah, hey, audit and fraud, friends and family. Okay, so listen, you can fake a lot of things. You can fake credentials, you can forge signatures, you can even fake love. I mean, who would want to, but some people do. But I think the hardest thing to fake is belief. Now, some people still disturbingly come close to faking belief because belief is powerful. It softens the defenses, it turns suspicion into trust. It's kind of the reason why we follow leaders, why we give to causes, and why we open our wallets and our hearts to people who speak a language of purpose, right? But what happens when belief becomes a business? When conviction has a bank account? How do you tell the difference between the preacher and the salesman? Well, uh, like every other Friday, this one is going to be crazy. You might want to stick around and see how all of that stuff I just said turns out. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Friday Fraudster podcast. Join them as they discuss sad, funny, and sometimes disturbing fraud stories. Be sure to catch past episodes on your favorite podcasting platform or go to www.fridayfraudster.com.
All right, so listen. Let me throw this out to you, to everyone listening, and to our co-host that we're going to bring up in a few minutes. When you meet someone who radiates conviction, maybe it's in business, maybe it's their faith, maybe it's activism about a certain cause, do you trust the message or do you trust the messenger? That's the question that I have for you guys. And so, without further ado, oh, by the way, before I bring up the guest for today, let me just say this. Christine is not here this week. So, for those of you who just want to see Christine, prepare to be disappointed because you're stuck with me and Thomas again.
I'm sorry.
But next week, next
No,
week
not
we
next week.
won't. Next week we won't be here because I'm going to be someplace very special. It's a big surprise, and if I can get the timing right, I'll probably post some hints and maybe even some video. But let me just say this one is big. This one is a big surprise. We should do a segment where will Robert pop up next? But the week after that, we have someone else joining us that you all will be surprised to see joining. And so let me just say this. If you ever want to join the show, send me a message because, well, the bar is low. I mean, Thomas is here, so he's
It's so low. Anybody can do better than me. Please contact Rob.
so okay. So Thomas, let me just open the question back up to you now. Let me throw this to you. When you meet someone that radiates conviction, maybe in business, faith, activism, whatever, do you
Yep.
trust the message or do you trust the messenger?
I think first I've tried to focus on the message, to be honest, because I might love you to death, but if what it is you're, for lack of a better term, selling isn't something that I'm passionate about, I care about, or I agree with, then it doesn't matter my opinion of you. So it's more the message first. Then I have to trust you, like you, and support what you're doing.
Okay, I can see that. So what about you all listening? Happy Friday, Stephanie. Happy Friday, Kimberly. Do you trust the message or do you trust the messenger? So I'm gonna tell you. Here's what I think, because I think this is where it gets really, really, really tricky. Because um, I think Hmm, how do I say this? I think most of us want to believe the message if it aligns with what we believe, kind
Yep.
of like what you just said, right? Um, and so when we do that, I think we kind of outsource the due diligence to our emotions.
I agree. Outsources the emotions, but also normally, especially in cases like this, you're normally introduced by someone you trust. So
Oh,
so if my pastor or someone that I go to church with that I truly or even someone like yourself, if you said, Thomas, you really need to meet such and such, they have a great product, they have a great service, whatever, I'm going to put my faith in you and trust in you that I can trust them.
okay. So that's a good point. So I think what happens is that's kind of the sweet spot for manipulation now, isn't it? Because hmm, sincerity, especially combined with a common interest, a mutual friend, or the performance of sincerity, that's
Yep.
kind of a power. And with that, you don't need force, you don't need threats, you don't even need a contract. You just
Nope.
need trust at that particular point. And so it gets even trickier because sometimes the person performing that sincerity, they aren't after fame or even control. What they want is far more um, sinister, sometimes far more profitable.
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Okay, so let's see. So Stephanie said, Stephanie said, if I don't trust you, I don't care about your message.
That's so true. Right? That is so
Yeah,
true.
it
Yeah.
is. Well, and I think it's one of those things that rings true for those of us in the audit or fraud profession too, because um we see a lot and our antenna is always up. We are kind of on guard first, and it takes a lot to build up the trust. Whereas I think a lot of other people, they lead with the trust and then kind of look for things to disqualify you. So you're qualified first just based on a mutual friend or the mutual cause. And now you have to disqualify. Whereas with us, you're kind of disqualified to begin with, and everything we see is qualifying you.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Absolutely. I was introduced to an organization recently that helps men and women when they leave prison to kind of get reestablished. They provide some housing, food, clothing, job opportunities, kind of train them on how to do interviews, what type of jobs that will hire, felons and such. And um, they whenever we arrived at this location to have a breakfast, they kind of introduced that organization. They had 15 or 20 guys all dressed the exact same, dressed kind of nice, all out front welcoming us and thanking us for attending the breakfast. It wasn't about, hey, can you please donate money, hey, can you please help us. It was just a sincere thank you for just showing up to hear about the organization. And that was a bigger impact than anything going on, inside and the presentations and all that. Seeing the people that it was helping was a huge impact immediately.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So, hmm. I was about to ask a silly question, but this is not a silly episode today, so I won't
No,
go
it's
that
not.
route.
Yep.
I won't go that route. Um, when you donate money to an organization, we've had several of these, and I've asked this question a few different ways, but I
Mhm.
want to go a different way with it this time. Um, when you donate to a cause, how much do you need to believe in the messenger? So we've talked about the organization before. How much do you believe in the organization? That was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So this week I
Yeah.
want to switch it up a little bit. How much do you have to believe in the messenger?
So I think the challenge. and you are normally the one that gives all the details of the case. So I'm trying to not spoil it too much here, but there's a difference between something that you're listening to, the messenger, the opportunity, and it being local where you can walk down the street and check it out, and it being something that's more on the international side, especially if it's international and it's has to do with something that kind of has to go under the radar anyway. You have to almost you can't investigate as much because they're not going to have as much information out there. So yeah, you have to your faith ends up shifting more towards the messenger and whoever is recommending them, because you can't exactly verify what's going on sometimes. How's that for vague?
That was very vague. So I'll tell you, for me, um, whatever the cause is, I kind of have to have some sort of belief in the messenger too.
Yeah.
It, so for example, if I like a certain movie, series, for example, I love John Wick. Love John Wick.
I knew I liked you for a reason. Yep.
But I also like Keanu Reeves. Now,
Yeah.
I realize he's not a stellar actor,
Yep.
but he understands his role and he plays it very well. But outside of acting, if you look at this man, he's a fantastic gentleman.
Yes, he is.
The way he chooses to live, where he spends his money, the things that he does, you can tell he's a stand-up individual.
Yep.
And quite frankly, that kind of draws me closer to the John Wick franchise, knowing that someone of his character is included in that franchise.
Absolutely right. 100% agree.
Yeah, so okay. Happy Friday. I'm guessing, I don't know who this is. I think this is Carol. I'm guessing. Stephanie says she agrees with you. It does depend. Yeah. 100% it depends.
It's funny you mentioned Keanu Reeves and such. If I see the name Christopher Nolan, I'm going to see the movie. I don't care what the topic is. I'm gonna because it's going to be a great movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Sticking
Yeah.
on the movie route, but yeah.
And I think the opposite is true too. Unfortunately, sometimes a cause can be good, but someone who's involved in it might end up being bad, and it could tarnish your view of it. I'll give you an example. I also really, really, really like Deadpool. I
Uh-huh.
mean, it does not get any better than that from a superhero franchise.
Yep. Yep. I've got a keychain of them right here. Yep.
Right? Like, it is hilarious. However, and I will say, I used to be a huge Ryan Reynolds fan. However, recent things that he's done, I'm just like, oh, dude, you're weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
so taking it back before our time, well, before my time, it might not be before your time, but when we had the Vietnam War, we had certain actors and actresses that were really, really vocal activists, right? And then they went back into movies, and there are some veterans that to this day will not watch their movies. Period. Like they will not give them any kind of, they're not making sure they're not going to get a dime, of their money. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes, you avoid certain things because of their personality and what they've done.
yeah,
Stephanie,
and
it
I
was
will
not that bad of a movie. Come on now, there were some great scenes in there. Anytime, never mind. I'll just stop there.
okay. But to the point though, a lot of people feel this way about the crossover. I've got to say though, I actually liked it, but I understand why I liked it. It was so nostalgic.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So
So
the
nostalgic, but then also able to make fun of the status of the Marvel universe, and then mocking Wolverine that he's going to be doing it until he's 90. I mean, yeah, there was some great one-liners
yeah.
in there.
Yeah, and now to Stephanie's point though, the acting and the storyline wasn't as good as previous or the actual Deadpool movies themselves. Uh, but the nostalgia, man, it was it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, so but yeah. So
We are
sometimes,
so far off topic. It's great.
we are on topic though. I'm bringing it right back home. I'm bringing it right back home.
All right.
So sometimes the messenger is the one that we see, the one that we trust, the one that we value. And it can get to a point where we value the messenger so much that we lose the message itself. And when that happens, it opens us up to being used, abused, and mistreated.
I would flip that just a little bit. You value the purpose or the meaning or like what they are doing so much that you don't question the person as much as you should.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, yeah,
'Cause
fair enough.
in this case, in this story here, that's my impression of it. To be honest, it wasn't the fact that they were trusting this person so much. It was they believed in the mission that he was supposedly doing, and that's what they were focused on more.
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree with that. So let's talk about today's story. It begins in Georgia, the state in the US, not the country, and it stretches across continents and finally ends with the fugitive on the run. Our central figure here is a guy named Jason Schenck. He's formerly a resident of Dublin, Georgia, and an indictment was unsealed August of 2023, where he was accused of orchestrating a long running scheme to solicit millions of dollars from Christian charities and individual donors. Now, what he did was he primarily promised that the funds would be used to produce and distribute Bibles and Christian literature in China. But here's the catch. For almost a decade, from 2010 to 2019, that promise was a facade. And then to make it even crazier, somewhere along the line around 2016 or so, he renounced his US citizenship. And prosecutors say that that was just a ploy to avoid certain financial reporting obligations when he did that. So, all right, what do you think, Thomas? I've introduced it. What do you think?
What do I think? So allegedly, all of this stuff happened, right? Because he's still on the run and he hasn't technically been found guilty of anything quite yet. But so to give a little backstory for those that might not be aware, China they have state sanctioned churches and they have state sanctioned printing and such of Bibles. um, you cannot like I cannot take a case of Bibles into China with me to hand them out to people. That's illegal and you can be thrown in jail for it. So there are certain organizations that find ways to get Bibles into the country to share the Bible with people there in the country. But another problem or concern there is that the Bibles that are printed there are changed to match more of their socialist communist values. So they're corrupting the Bible as they're doing it. So there are organizations. So that's why I was saying earlier, a lot of the stuff they don't necessarily publicize as much because they want to keep funneling the Bibles into this country where they're essentially not allowed to be doing what they're doing. So it's hard to validate. Okay, did you really take 50 Bibles in last month? You're not going to have proof of that because if you have proof of it, you're going to be thrown in jail if you're caught in China. So that's where some of this comes up. But it's. I mean, anytime Rob, you know me, and a lot of the listeners here know me that my faith is very important to me. So anytime there's fraud related to my Christian faith, it hurts. It's a personal level for this. So I hate that something like this could, especially that it happened for 10 years. That's low.
So now let's build on what you just said though, because that's part of the reason why I opened up the way that I did.
Yep.
Technically, what he was purporting to do was illegal in China,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So now, if you are donating to this organization and what they are doing is illegal, do you okay, and I'm not saying that this is true, I'm asking the question.
Yep.
But do you deserve what you've gotten? You literally made a deal with a criminal to begin with.
Yep.
So
Okay.
do you deserve what you've gotten?
Gotcha. So that's a fair question. So again, looking at it from a biblical perspective here, the Bible says that we are to obey man's law as long as it does not contradict God's law. So from our perspective, if it is illegal to share the Bible, share the gospel, hand that out, then God's law trumps man's law, and therefore in our eyes it shouldn't be illegal, and it's not illegal, and it's okay to support this.
But the
So we don't
Chinese
look at them
government
as
wouldn't think that.
Say that again, sorry.
But the Chinese government wouldn't think that though.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I don't disagree, but that's the approach. If it doesn't contradict what the Bible teaches, then no, we should not support it. But if it contradicts it, then it doesn't matter what China says.
Okay, so now with that said, what do you guys think? Did he kind of deserve it? Or did they kind of deserve to be swindled because what they were doing was illegal according to, well, the Chinese government? So, okay.
And y'all can totally disagree with me. I'm a big boy. So don't feel like you have to agree or anything like that. You can disagree if you would like. That's fine.
Well, and you know I have to play devil's advocate and bring up the interesting parts, right? But here's the big shock though. He raised over $30 million.
30 million over 10 years, that's about $3 million a year. That part is surprising to me, that there wasn't more involved there as far as like some kind of just due diligence, following things up. And I say that I'm gonna do a little research. I'm gonna pull up Christine. I'm gonna do a little research here in a second. But there are organizations. They're 99% of what they do is distribute Bibles. So I'm curious how much money, what their annual budgets are in comparison. So I'm gonna check into that a little bit here.
And so this is what makes it a whole lot more interesting for him too, because anyone caught distributing Bibles or Christian literature outside of official channels in China can face arrest, deportation, or imprisonment. And then there's also the other alternative that I didn't mention that could happen.
Yep.
Right? So I'm thinking if you're doing some due diligence before donating to him, just a simple Google search should have let you know that this was illegal according to their laws. And so you kind of went into business with him knowing that this was something that was not necessarily legal in that particular country, right?
Yeah, but this is again going back to that matter of faith. I would have no problem donating to a charity like that, to be completely honest. So I was just looking in. So I would say almost all of the hotels in the United States, and whenever I've traveled internationally, often they're there internationally. What is in the nightstand when you open up the drawer, Rob?
Oh, sure. There's always a Bible in the nightstand. Yeah.
But there's a Bible in the nightstand. It's put there by Gideon's International. So the Gideons are
Yeah.
the ones that hand out the Bibles. Okay, so I just looked it up. Their annual budget for the fiscal year ending May 31st of 2025 was about $168 million for 1 year. Okay,
Wow.
large organization, but you can also easily go and find out and learn more information about them. Where's the money going? How's it spent? Where does it come from? What are their funding resources? You can do all of this research. So again, you can do the research to see, is this an authentic organization that is trying to get the Bibles wherever? Same with China. You can find out what organizations are working on that, and you can get information. So I blame the people that were supporting him and doing the fundraising, not because what he was doing is illegal in China, but I blame them for not doing the due diligence to see, is this a legitimate organization?
And so Stephanie brings up a good point, right? I
Yeah.
wonder if his bank checked on him. Now, here's where it gets real interesting because of the $30 million, he is alleged to have diverted huge portions of that into personal spending and exotic investments. Let's talk about some of those. About $1 million went to online sports gambling. About 850,000 went into equity in a private nuclear energy company. Approximately $1 million went into diamonds, gold, and other precious metals. $4 million was used to purchase at least 16 life insurance policies in different people's names. 7 million, and this is a lot of money, right? 7 million was used to pay a family farm business that he controlled. $320,000 in real estate purchased in Chile, and then another 800,000 or so in credit card purchases, stock purchases, and stuff like that. Now, he's alleged to have managed and run all this money through several shell corporations and foreign bank accounts. For example, one was called Morningstar Ministries, based out of Dublin, Georgia. Another one was called Connect to Asia or something like that, and that was based out of Singapore. There was another one called CLF Asia Limited, that was in Hong Kong. So we had a bunch of shell corporations. So I imagine he was probably funneling the money back and forth between US and foreign companies that the bank probably didn't have a good handle on it, because as I mentioned, he renounced his US citizenship thinking that he could get past the Know Your Customer Bank requirements and the Bank Secrecy Act requirements and money laundering requirements that banks have. So
He definitely put in a lot of effort, didn't he? And it almost seems like he was trying to figure out how many different ways he could make money, right? Is the like all these different almost get rich quick type schemes, or the family farm. God only knows what's going on at the family farm. That was, and the property in Chile. So I just looked it up. They do have extradition treaty in place with the United States. So it's not like he could run to Chile and like hide out there. They catch him there, they're just going to send him back here.
oh yeah, most countries have an extradition agreement. I think Cuba is one that doesn't. If you go to Cuba, they won't, make you leave. There are a few others that I just can't think of right now. But here's another twist, right? So the bulk of the funds came from two main sources. Roughly 20 million allegedly came from one charitable organization and its donors, and roughly about 10 million came from a second charity and its donors. Most notably, though, a lot came from the Amish community and certain Mennonite groups in Ohio and North Carolina. So he extended himself beyond any religious denomination. It was really about the money based on the mission.
And those two groups of people are not the type to go online and do research and follow up necessarily.
There you go. Yeah.
So he reduced his risk there.
But apparently either they asked for evidence or he just gave it to them willingly, because allegedly he gave them falsified spreadsheets showing distribution figures by province and Bible counts. And that was his way of reassuring them that he was doing the right thing with their money.
Yeah. That's the old, if you're getting all of the information from one source, that one source, if he's lying, he can make up all this other stuff. You've got to be able to do some kind of a third-party research, regardless of what it is, right? It doesn't matter what we're talking about. You can't just take one person's word as the truth, especially when you're talking about this much money.
Oh, yep. Stephanie's right about this. Insurance policies can be used for money laundering, especially if you get, oh goodness, I'm forgetting the exact type. The policies that you can borrow against, and they have, oh man, why I'm drawing blank now on the term used for those. And I actually have one, and I'm sitting here. Anyway, yeah, there are insurance policies that you can borrow from. You can draw money from them. They have cash surrender value that is fairly significant.
Yep.
And yeah, absolutely, they can be used for money laundering. Now, here's the thing. Here's what I'm wondering. Say again.
Whole life or universal life. That's what you can.
Universal life. Yeah. Yeah. Universal life.
Yep.
Here's what I'm wondering though. What in the world could drive someone to do this? Obviously, we know it's greed, but let me drill down into why I'm asking this and why I'm saying this. In order for him to actually understand that this market exists, think about how you just laid it out. In China, there is a sole provider of Bibles, and they actually alter the Bible when they change it. And it's government sanctioned that it has to come through this one source. Now, in order for you to know this and to know that you can now manipulate people by saying, well, we believe in something different, you give me money, I will smuggle the right materials to where they need to go so that we can spread the message. At some point, he had to have been around religious people or involved in some sort of denomination himself. And at some point, you would think that something happened to make him snap and turn on his faith. Or maybe he was just a manipulator from the beginning, But something happened psychologically. What would make somebody do something like this? Because if you think about it, he created a persona of a missionary committed to doing this. And he had a narrative that was emotionally heavy. And he used that trust to draw people in. But in order to know the things that he knew, you had to have been close to it at some particular point in time.
Right. And to take it one step further, the groups that donated the money, the bulk of the money, they are the more, with full respect to those people, they can be more susceptible to this kind of fraud because one of the groups, if I remember right, they don't have the internet and such. They are completely living off the grid. Okay. So they aren't as aware. We're more aware of fraud because we live it, right? But they are even more disconnected, and so he targeted a more susceptible group for this as well. And to be honest, you're right. He probably at some point in time was going to church at least on a semi-regular basis, to where he learned about this type of process of trying to smuggle the Bibles, and he came up with a scheme. It tells me, or I might be wrong, I don't know his heart and his beliefs, but it feels like he was showing up, but he didn't actually believe in what they were teaching and what the Bible says. He was just showing up because maybe a family member was making him go, or that was just tradition, so he was going, but he didn't actually believe what was being taught and what was being preached. And we have to be frank, we have pastors that are the same way. We have people with mega churches who you kind of question if they actually believe what it is that they're teaching. I mean, that's just how people are sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Stephanie says money launderers will see an early cancellation fee as a price of cleaning their illicit funds. Ooh, now that's interesting. Okay,
So,
so now, how did this thing unravel? I still think we're not really clear on that because it seems like the turning point was gradual. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, says that the scheme began as early as April of 2010 and continued until about July of 2019. But
hmm,
investigators from the IRS Criminal Investigations Unit eventually traced a bunch of money flows. They noticed suspicious shell companies. They noticed foreign accounts, and then they also noticed incongruities between the claimed Bible distributions and the actual traceable activity. So I'm thinking what may have tipped them off, and because I hadn't found anything that said, okay, this was the smoking gun, and maybe I missed that because there's a lot of paperwork on this one. But
yeah.
here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the sheer improbability of distribution volume was a big tip off because we know that in China, again, there's a sole source provider for this. So for anyone to say that we're printing large volumes of Bibles to take to China, that should be a red flag. I also think that the discrepancies between the accounting spreadsheets that donors received versus the actual distribution records, that probably was a tip off. But then also the use of shell corporations across multiple jurisdictions. And then too, when you think about the fact that this man renounced his U.S. citizenship while still accessing U.S. funds, that had to be like one of the biggest red flags. I want to get paid in U.S. currency. Everything is denominated in U.S. currency, but I'm now denouncing my U.S. citizenship. That almost sounds like somebody who's committing fraud and ready to try and find a country with no extradition laws.
Well, and also if anybody is talking and they bring up that audit guy, they know you, right? You have that brand. There's you. If you bring up KPMG, you don't think of a person, right? You think of an organization. With these organizations, there was one guy, right? So that would be my red flag is, oh, tell me about your staff. Tell me about your distribution process. Who do you have over there right now? Who's planning on going over there? There was nobody. Because that's the thing with not just in China, but in other countries where it is legal to pass them out. You still have, okay, we have a family that's over there living right now, living over there right now, and they're helping to distribute. And we have these people over here, and they're going to be taking some cases with them the next time they go visit. And you hear those kind of stories. He wouldn't have had those kind of stories. He didn't have any kind of distribution process. So I think that would have also caused some red flags.
Oh, that's true. Very true. Very good point. Okay, so now we've heard the story. We see what has happened. Somehow he was caught. We'll probably never find out how he actually was caught because it would probably tip some future criminals off onto what to avoid. But let's talk about the charges and the consequences because here's what the courts have laid out. He's been indicted on multiple counts, including 4 counts of wire fraud. It's always wire fraud, right?
Always.
3 counts of international concealment of money laundering. And you know what? Well, hold on. Before I say that, 13 counts of concealment of money laundering, 21 counts of money laundering involving transactions over $10,000, and then 1 count of failure to file report of foreign bank account. Uh,
Out of all the counts, the last one is like, yeah, I mean,
right? Okay. So what really got me here though was the money laundering counts. They were broken down very skillfully. Three
yep.
counts of international concealment of money laundering, 13 counts of concealment of money laundering. You notice there's a distinction between international versus, domestic. Now, conviction would carry up to 20 years in prison per count, depending on the sentence. Obviously, there would be a forfeiture of property, and he would probably face some financial penalties. Um, and then obviously supervised release if he ever gets out. Once captured
I,
and convicted.
well, actually, according to this article, it said there is no parole in the federal system. So
Oh,
yeah,
you know what?
yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. After he serves, yeah, then he'd be watched like a hawk, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. Well, and honestly, they probably stacked the time to where he would never get out.
You know, well, he's 45 years old, so even if he does get out, he'd be up there by the time he got out.
Yeah, so Stephanie's saying it could very well have been from the suspicious activity reports filed by his bank. That's what I'm guessing based on that last charge. I'm guessing that, the SAR came in and they started to consolidate information and somebody put two and two together and said, wait a minute, this is the same dude over here that's over here. Because again, remember, he renounced his US citizenship thinking that he could avoid doing those suspicious activity reports. But correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, but don't aren't those still required if it's international money coming in from a foreign bank? I'm almost positive that they are because I remember. So, okay, funny related story, kind of off topic a little bit, but still on topic. When I worked in higher education, we would get when you would have kids whose parents were wealthy, they would wire money in um, to the university to pay for tuition, fees, all that other good stuff. I
Gotcha.
remember in one particular instance, I was sitting at my desk and the controller called me up one day and she said, hey, Robert, I got to talk to you. And you guys know how I feel about that. Whenever someone says, I want to talk to you, that's probably not going to be good. And so what she told me was there were a certain group of people who were sending in a whole lot more than what was due in tuition, fees, and housing. And they wanted the rest of the money to be placed in their child's account. And she said, should I do this? And I said, I don't know. Let's think about this. Let's talk about this for just one moment. And I said,
Uh,
essentially, they're wiring money to us to pay for services. They're wiring too much money, and it's a fairly substantial amount, and they want us to deposit the remaining in their child's bank account that they can access as cash. What does that sound like to you? She said, I know. That's why I called you. I wanted to see if somebody else had the same thought. so, 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 so we started talking about even if we did do it, wouldn't we need to file a wouldn't we need to tell the bank so that they could file a suspicious activity report and have them actually collect all the information? And so to Stephanie's point, she said we file on everyone. That's what I thought.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where the money originates. It's coming into a US bank account. So I still am confused as to why he renounced his US citizenship thinking that he could avoid some of this reporting. That is weird for me, but
I'm still thinking he had in his mind that he could flee to South America and not be extradited, not be chased. That's my instinct on it. I mean, I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking.
So that could be the case too. So here's what I'm doing right now because you got me thinking about this. I want to see what countries will not extradite people to the US. And it's only a small list. So check this out. China, depending on the day, right? Russia,
Mm-hmm.
Saudi Arabia has no formal treaty though diplomatic and political factors can intervene, so they may or may not. Iran makes sense. Cuba, I already mentioned that one previously. Oh, now this was a new one on me. I didn't even think about this one. Venezuela.
Yep.
It makes sense.
Venezuela probably just depends on the year.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I was about to say. Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen.
Okay, all three of those. Yep, I can.
Yeah,
See
that
it.
checks. Oh, now this one's a surprise. Okay. Wow. Okay. Cambodia.
Hmm.
So they don't have active bilateral U.S. treaties, but they still might. But so Cambodia, that's a surprise. Laos, that's an interesting one because Laos is so small. Okay, Vietnam, probably not a surprise there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this last one is a surprise to me. Nepal.
I might be wrong about this, but aren't they very closely aligned with China?
I'm not sure. I actually have a few friends from Nepal. That's why I was like, wait a minute, you guys, okay. Now, there's more. South Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
This next one is a real surprise to me because of, well, I won't even get into it on air. Somebody else might figure out where I'm going with this one, but Somalia.
No, I can see that one. Yeah, that one doesn't surprise me.
I can see it, but I don't think we should see it.
Probably right, but it doesn't. That's one of those that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I said South Sudan. Sudan is also on that list, and what else? I see Stephanie is saying the UAE. I'm not seeing the UAE in what I'm pulling up. Doesn't mean that you're wrong though.
If I remember right, I might be wrong about this, but the UAE will extradite as long as it's not one of their locals.
Gotcha. And here's why I say this: the UAE is one that I expected to see on the list, but when you added that caveat, that makes a whole lot of sense, though, Thomas. Because yeah. So
Yep.
maybe that's what it is with them. Very
Yeah, if I remember
interesting.
right, UAE is about 80, or I don't know if it's the UAE, but if I remember right, Dubai is like 85% non-local.
Yep.
So yeah, if an American tries to hide over there, they're going to get extradited. But if it's a local that committed a crime over here, yeah, they're not being sent over.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about the bigger picture here, because what does this thing teach us? This one teaches us a lot, right? I think the first thing is charitable trust is fragile. Even deeply held beliefs and emotional appeals aren't necessarily safeguards against fraud. Now, I think the second thing is oversight matters, man. This is how many times do we have cases where the right question here or there would have exposed it all or kept certain people from investing in that thing that they invested in? And I think another thing is when it comes to complex frauds, you got to have some sort of cross-border enforcement or maybe even cross-border collaboration when it comes to investigation. And that may have happened in this case. I don't know. But I think those are some of my big takeaways from this one. What about you? What are you thinking with this one? This is wild.
This one's wild. Just asking simple questions sometimes can help. So the last night I was actually at my church at a church function, and there was a new charity that we were supporting, and it's meals for underprivileged kids. Okay. And now if the lady came in saying, hey, just write me a check, I would have been asking more questions. I would have been doing more research. I would have been trying to find out a little bit more information. But instead it was, can you hack brown bag lunches for these kids, and writing special notes on them, giving them positive, uplifting messages and whatnot. The odds of someone asking for a couple hundred brown bags with applesauce and juice and crackers, and what are the odds of that being a fraudulent event, right? So I think a lot of times you just kind of have to pause for a moment and say, how easy is this to validate, and how could this be used from a fraudulent standpoint, and just kind of do a temperature check on it. And now she was recommended to me by someone that I trust, and that's their job, is actually to connect more with community opportunities like this. So I know his job is to kind of vet those opportunities also. So yeah, just kind of having that, just I don't know, I don't want to say common sense, but it's almost kind of a common sense check. Same with this. If they just simply asked him, hey, who do you have on the ground there right now? How many people do you have working out there right now? Just kind of drilling in. Those are honest questions to ask, and you're not even searching for fraud necessarily. You're trying to learn more about the organization, and especially early on, I think that would have fallen apart very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Oftentimes, I'm amazed at the schemes that we talk about here. But it's also easy to play Monday morning quarterback too. I do realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. By 2019, 2018, after he'd been doing it for a while, he probably had a routine down of how to, answer certain questions. But because people doing bad things are not always too smart. Exactly. I mean, how many stupid criminals have we come across over the years?
Yeah, well, but I don't know. Sometimes when you look at
Some
some
of
of
them
the
have
things
been
that they,
really smart. Yeah.
yeah, some of them, but yeah, I think for the most part, yeah, you're both right. Most times people doing bad things are not that bright.
How dare you?
I think back in April 2010, if the first few people he tried to swindle would have asked the right questions and would have dug in just a little bit, I think it would have just fallen completely apart, and never would. He probably wouldn't have gone to jail for it, but it probably would have shown him, oh, people are going to actually ask questions about this. Maybe I need to do something else.
Well, I think this also speaks to the power of due diligence, or don't diligence, as I call it. You don't do it until it's too late.
Yeah,
The larger organizations get, oftentimes the more lax their due diligence becomes, especially when it comes to charitable donations. Oh, here's a group that needs help. We'll just do it. And then they put in their annual report. We donated X number of dollars to this charitable organization because now it makes them feel good. And so when you get to those larger organizations and that happens, it makes it a little easier because it is more impersonal.
very true. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. All right. So, anything else on this one this week?
No, sadly, this is a pretty cut and dry case. It's and sadly, I'm not surprised by it, to be honest. Um, you have a scheme going that hits people's emotional heartstrings. Hey, we're trying to get the word out, trying to get the good word out. But then hiding it under the mask of China to where it's harder to prove it. I mean, it's I'm sure there's plenty of others out there still committing this kind of fraud right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, all right, guys. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Friday Fraudster. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow me on LinkedIn. You can see us every Friday, except next Friday, because I'm going to be somewhere real special. If you need some really awesome audit training, give me a call because, well, I mean, who else would you call that can do it as well as me? No, I'm just kidding. There are a lot of us good trainers out there. I am one of the best, but there are a lot of us good ones out there.
And he's humble about it too.
I mean, I had to say it. I'm trying to bring a little levity to the show after. It was heavy, man, because that was a lot of money. It was a lot of trust broken. It was crazy. So anyway, thank you for joining us this week on the episode, and we will see you on the 24th. All right. See you guys.
Thanks.